Hello and welcome to Future Procurement. My name is Robert Freeman and today I am happy to welcome Francisco Comino Ramos from Spain. Francisco has an extensive experience in quality, production, purchasing in many sectors, both for small and medium enterprises, national and multinational companies. So really wide and broad experience. Welcome to our podcast, Francisco.
Hello, Robert. Listen.
Great to have you. Actually, we were connected with Remy de la Verne. Thank you, Remy, also if you are listening. Yes. And Francisco, I ask you to start with telling a little bit about yourself, the key or the milestones in your career, your background, your experience. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Francisco Comino. I am biochemist, expert in the food industry, retail, and food service with broad experience. Okay, I worked 2 years in quality, 6 years in production, 16 years in purchasing, and 6 years in corporate social responsibility. I worked in listed company, international, small, medium, different sizes of company in different sectors. So today I work as advisor and independent consultant for purchasing, logistics, and corporate social responsibility. And it's a pleasure for me to attend to this podcast.
Fantastic. And really many types of companies and many sectors. And what we would like to stop on today, and we discussed this a little bit before we push the record button on the interview. We discussed about concentrating this talk a little bit on some specific activities for every procurement, purchasing or supply chain specialist, and it will be around making the cost savings and negotiations with our partners, with suppliers, vendors, with service providers, and so on. So, Francisco, for sure, in this long experience that you have some great examples. You have some tools and advice that you can share with us. Can you start with maybe having the general approach that you have to cost savings and cost saving practices that you have developed throughout your career and that you are bringing now to other companies as an advisor?
Yes, I would say that in cost savings, the more important thing is to understand everything in the dossier. Many people think that the important is negotiate, and they focus all the work as if it was a war in which they have to fight against the supplier to get the price. And I don't think that is the most profitable way to approach this kind of cost-saving approach for purchasing. From my point of view, I bought food, I bought different products of different categories, different markets, different origins, and in all the cases, I think that the most important thing is to identify where is the cost, and to share and to make an extra effort to identify this cost and looking for the way to reduce the cost. I don't think it's the right way to work, fighting to win a part of the profit, and to do that the other part, the supplier, support the cost. That's not good for anyone, because that could be a solution in the short term, but in the medium and in the long term, you will find that you have to face a fire, you have to face a problem, because that's not the long-term solution. The long-term solution is to identify where is the cost and to work with a creative solution to reduce that cost. It doesn't matter that cost it's in your side or is in the side of the supplier. You have to reduce the cost. And that is the constructive way that I have found. For instance, sometimes the main cost can be in logistic. Okay, if it's in logistic, try to look for a creative way to reduce the logistic cost. Maybe sharing part of the cost, maybe looking for another medium of transport. Doesn't matter. There are so many possibilities, but it's better to find a way to reduce the cost than to fight to put the cost in the part of the other side of the table. Maybe it's in the plastic of the bottle, or in the material, in the raw material. Maybe it's in the way that you are making your orders. Doesn't matter where. You have to analyze the cost breakdown of the product, identify where are the main points of cost, and trying to look for solutions to reduce the cost. And at the end, looking for the better partner to keep that cost in the lower possible place.
Fantastic. And this, sorry that I interrupt you, but it's great what you say, and I think it's a perfect algorithm, step by step, what you should do for that. And what I'm thinking, it sounds very logical, it sounds fantastic, and as I say, step by step instruction. But when you think about this approach, how big part of these steps, if it's all steps, maybe I interrupted, maybe there were more steps, but how big part of these steps can be made in the office by the procurement manager or purchasing manager, and how big part must be done together with the supplier or producer of the product or our vendor?
You have to share the work. You have to feel that the supplier is another tool, is another partner that is going to help you to reduce the cost, and you are going to have a team that is bigger than your own team. It's not only the team that you got in the office, it's not only the knowledge of your team, it's also the knowledge of the supplier, their team, their factory. With this approach, you have to maintain your strategy, but you can maintain your strategy making a new scenario. I'll tell you one sample.
Okay.
It was a good way to cost savings in a dossier that was used for Carrefour Group, because I worked at that moment at Dia Group, and Dia Group was one of the company in Carrefour Group, and Carrefour Group take it this way of negotiating for the European negotiators. It was a dossier of softeners. You know, softeners for garments.
Yeah, softeners. Okay.
Okay. In softeners, there is main costs are in logistic, and main costs are in the bottle, in the plastic of the bottle, and in the perfume.
Not in the liquid itself.
Not in the liquid. It doesn't matter if the liquid is water, softener, or the bottle is empty. The main problem is not the product, it's not the recipe. The main problem is the perfume. And the perfume might be 1 or 2% of the recipe, but might be 20% of the cost of the product. So if you focus this cost saving in trying to improve the cost and the control and the quality of the perfume, you can improve the dossier of softeners. So what we did 2 different dossiers. One dossier for perfume factories, for suppliers of perfumes, and another dossier for factories that make the final product. we split the dossier in two dossiers.
Fantastic. Okay.
This way, we homologated a couple of manufacturers for perfume and 3 or 4 manufacturers for the final product. That gave us different possibilities, like optimization of the logistic, because to transport the softener is nothing because it's so small quantity. But the transport of final product is a real big cost. So we could optimize the supply chain cost of the net of the logistic of the final product factories. And also we could standardize the quality of softeners, because it doesn't matter which manufacturer was going to do our final product, that the softener is going to be the same. And that, when we were buying the final product, was not always possible, because sometimes every manufacturer of softener has their own manufacturer of perfume. So when we change manufacturer of softener, we get different final products. And sometimes we get problems with the consumers that detected that it was not the smell that they were used to.
Exactly.
So
interesting. So what you have done, tell me if I understood you correct. What you have done, you not only have found the best supplier of the product, but you went one level deeper and you found the suppliers and you made the quotation for the producer of the key element of this product, right?
Yes.
So you went one step down.
And it resulted that it was a key element in two important things, in cost and in quality.
Fantastic.
So in this case, we changed the way of purchasing softeners, and it helps a lot, because the manufacturer of the perfume can help to you to control the final product of the softener. So it reduces your cost of control also. So the important thing is not to do what everybody does at the same way, at the same time, just trying to analyze where is the cost, where is the key element of the dossier, and trying to improve it. I think that's the best way to face any negotiation, any purchasing.
So the first shift, what should be done, if I listen to you, is to change the mindset and talk not only about the prices, but talking about the costs, right?
Yes.
And then you start to see these different elements, and then you start to see what is a cost driver, what can you influence, what you cannot influence.
Yes, I think that's the value that we can give to the companies from the purchase function, especially because if you keep your purchase function only in reducing price, you are taking out a lot of value that can be added. I mean, today, in 21st century, with the tools, with the technological tools, with the global sourcing, with all the elements that are in our hands, in fact, if you buy in the old way, just comparing offers and trying to look for the lower prices and trying to look for right product, right place, right quantity, that is okay, but it's 19th century approach. That can be done by the software, that can be done by the technology. It's not necessary persons to do that today. The persons can give added value. Why? Making a general approach, trying to identify key factors, and trying to make new scenarios, like this one that I have commented to you. But it's not always trying to reduce costs. Sometimes it's trying to improve loyalty of consumer, because a person is not going to change in the way you have defined this way of purchasing. And it's trying to optimize the local impact of your purchasing, because maybe that product is created in a place where the social or environmental impact is a key.
Exactly.
Is a key factor. And maybe several years ago, doesn't matter what happened in very many kilometers from the way you are going to buy your product.
Yeah.
But today, just one person with a smartphone can create a reputational crisis to your company,
Exactly.
identifying that you are acting in not an ethical way. So, this kind of approach, trying to identify value in the product and trying to identify impact and maximizing the positive impact, I think is the way that purchasing managers can help to companies to add value, reducing cost and increasing value of their brands.
Great. Francisco, it was one of my next questions, but you touched it already. Can you distinguish the difference between reducing cost and not taking away the value, so to say, if you know what I mean? You gave the example of when cost reduction can cause, for example, some environmental issues or social issues. I had in my head the example where reducing cost can be done by decreasing the material thickness in case of bottle, for example, and at some point of time it comes too much, you know what I mean, that for customers the product is not low cost, but it's perceived as just like a cheap and bad quality, you know. So how to make this limit where it's cost reduction becomes already like value reduction? How to make this difference? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I'm afraid I don't have the solution for everybody, for every case, for every product, for every dossier. But I think it's a matter of being coherent with the with the policy of the company, because reducing cost, reducing value is something that everybody knows how to do. But at the end, is detected by the customer. Okay?
Exactly.
Is going to penalize the company much more than the company is
earning
benefit by
exactly.
the cost. And I think that reduction of cost is always a good goal. It had been, it must be work always, but there is something before of that. That there is something that is must be prioritized. That are the income, the turnover, the sales. If your reduction of cost is going to create a problem in sales, avoid it, because you are going to create a problem to the company. It's better to buy a little more expensive and not create a problem in sales than buying cheaper and stopping the machine or the train that are sales. Every company needs increasing sales every moment, even by day. And if there is something that is going against that rule, has to be avoided.
It's nice explanation you have. What I had in my head always with this approach was some of the operations, some of the steps in either production, either in logistics, are adding value to final consumer of the product, and some are not. So what I always said to my employees, that you don't play with the things that are adding value, with the processes that are adding value, because it's kind of too easy to, as I say, example of reducing the thickness or taking away some materials to make the product less costly, but also it will become like less attractive for the customer, or customer will see and feel it, and he or she will feel cheated, So what I say, if it's unnecessary cost, if it's non-value adding cost, like you say, logistic cost or some, then it's probably, can it be a good approach?
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with that approach. The key, I think, is to avoid the keys that doesn't add any value, and avoid also the keys that are not perceived as value by the final customer.
I like it.
Because sometimes a product was defined many years ago, and somebody thought that it was important, that characteristic inside the product, and that it has been kept during all the different years. Nobody has stopped to think, okay, why are we buying this kind of fish that has to be fished at midnight, where the moon is blue, and because somebody thought that it was important. Okay, but that requires a price or a condition that is so high that nobody is going to appreciate. Exactly. So let's review it, because sometimes there are things that are not perceived like value, but create a cost directly or indirectly, because sometimes they reduce the sourcing.
Exactly.
You cannot make an open bid offer because the specifications of the product or the service are so constrained that there are only a couple of suppliers in the world that can create and have shared the war. This party for you and this party for me. So it's important to review the specifications, to identify the specifications that add value, and to work in reducing the cost and increasing the value.
Super. Great, Francisco. And I like your statement that who should judge if it's a value adding or not. That is final consumer of the good or customer of yours. It's good. So this is really the best judge you can have. It's nobody in the company, but it's being in customer shoes. You will understand, does it add value or not? It's not always working, this cost reduction approach. How come still many of our colleagues and are still using this, what you called old school, working with price reductions, making only the negotiation directed price reductions and negotiation driven price reductions?
Yes.
What do you think is the main reason for that? Is it that they don't know the mechanism for cost reduction, for waste reduction, this value chain analysis, or is it something else?
Well, I don't think there is only one answer. Maybe different situations and different costs. Sometimes you find people that is buying a kind of product, a kind of dossier during all his life, and that is not good. That is not good because at the when you are more working on the same market more than 4 or 5 years, you feel like nobody can help and can teach you anything. You tend to assume that everything is like that, and sometimes you avoid any solution that is not short-time solution. That could be one of the reasons. Another reason could be the urgency. Sometimes the procurement people needs to solve problem and to put the product in so short time with so small deadline that there are not time for a solution to medium or long time. So, okay, I understand that situation, but it should not be the regular situation because otherwise the company is going to be disconnected of the market. The market detects that. If you are used to open a dossier every 2 years and you open every 6 months, you are going to pay for that. Even when you think that is better this way because you are going to be on the better price, it's not true. It's not true. The company detects that you have not the final decision and you need to test again.
That's interesting. What about the companies who have a wide portfolio of products they are purchasing? Recently, I was in the factory, the producer of electronics, consumer electronics, and their portfolio was, I am now afraid to be mistaken, but it was more than 40,000 different SKUs. And then we are now working upon the category management or something like this, how to move in direction of category management. But in their practice, it was purely electronic RFQs, quotations, because they required speed and things like that. And I tried now with them to really establish this, what you described 10 minutes ago, this approach of going deeper in the costs and trying to think about the cost reduction of the key cost drivers. But in general, is it familiar to you such situations with really, really wide portfolio of SKUs and how to work with such wide variety of products you are purchasing?
It's not easy, but I think that the better approach to this situation is to distinguish which kind of these SKUs are key for your company and which are just necessary and are not so vital. In that case, that SKUs that are not so vital, I wouldn't lose my time in making the grid purchasing operation. I will externalize, I will try to outsource, or even I will try to have a company specializes in manufacturing and being the main customer, the main client. I think you have to distinguish and focus your purchasing activity in the SKUs that are key for your main activity. And maybe the important thing is not always the cost. Maybe it's the time of replenishing, or maybe it's the quality, the percentage of product that are received in perfect conditions of quality. It's important to know it's not same to be purchasing in a retail company where the profits are very low.
Exactly.
Or being purchaser in an electronic company where the purchases are not so low, for instance.
Yeah.
So the cycle of life of the product is also important.
Yeah. Their main KPI actually was time to market, as they told to me. So for them, it's speed is far more important than really profit on the issues that they have. So it's interesting.
In that case, I always should propose to investigate some cooperation with other companies that are not direct competitors but could have same necessities, and maybe it could be able to purchase together. If they are not competitors in direct competitors, why not share a volume of purchasing or making these deliveries faster or better quality or whatever is necessary.
That's another fantastic advice. I really didn't think about that, but cooperating with your potential partners who can have the same interest or the same product.
With other actors of the market that are not your direct competitors.
Fantastic advice. I like it. I really like it. Good. And this is actually, like you said, 21st century. You go from competition to more looking into cooperation and more looking into win-win solutions, not hiding and protecting yourself against others, but trying to find the creative way to really collaborate and to have a bigger synergies than only being on your own.
Yes, it is.
Fantastic. Francisco, I had so many more questions in my list, and I really look at the watch now, and the time is ticking away, and we are already talking more than 30 minutes, and we need to round up. So maybe next time we can continue talking more. But for now, I think we need to round up. Can you, in the end of this episode, say the final thoughts about the topics we were discussing, about the general purchasing, procurement, supply chain management, advice that you can give to our listeners all around the world, what they should focus on? What do you think are the big things that they need to take away from this podcast with you?
Well, I try to summarize in focus on the key elements of your purchasing, empathic with the necessities of your company, communicate all the markets, your necessities, and try to keep on the 21st century way of purchasing, because otherwise it will be a mistake.
Fantastic. Great advice from the person who is so long in this area. How many years in total? You said each of your role were 6 years, 14 years. What is the total experience you have, Francisco?
I got an experience of 30 years.
30 years, fantastic. Great. And what is number one thing, do you think, after 30 years you have been in this profession? What do you think will happen another 30 years from now? What is the main change factor for the future of procurement, purchasing, and supply chain management?
I think that the main characteristic should be analytical with the data, but don't forget to have a global approach to your problem. The problem that you got now have solution. Maybe you don't find it, but it has solution.
Great. Fantastic to have you with us, Francisco, and great talk, and thank you for your time and good advice.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us in this podcast till the very end. I remind that we were talking with Francisco Comino Ramos from Spain, who is experienced purchasing specialist and super wise person with many great advices and a lot of inspiration and great ideas that I really hope you will be able to implement also in your procurement organizations and use for your procurement practice. Hope you have liked this discussion and hope you liked listening to Francisco the same as I did. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast. Write your comments and questions wherever you listen to this podcast. We're always like to see what you think about us. My name is Robert Freeman, and this was Future Procurement. Talk to you soon.